So while that video was rendering, I went in and just messed around and verified everything was right. And I did go back in, so we were correct. If you go look at the eslintrc.json, then this entry is supposed to be in there. And so let's put that back in. And I don't know if I typed something wrong before, or potentially it just enforced the rules, because here we didn't have trailing commas. And if we don't have trailing commas, then it's going to give us that error. But when we save, because we said in our prettier RC, trailing comma, and then at the end of line, when we save, on the save, it's going to go fix anything that's wrong, then it should have, when we ran it, dropped those commas in. So I'm not exactly sure what was going on, why it wasn't working correctly, but if you just verify that you have everything typed this way and then typed that way, and then that error should disappear, and we should be able to do what we want to with this file now. Okay, and we are getting an error saying we're not using logo anymore, and when we see those types of things, we can make a decision. The quick fix, we can just get rid of it for now. We're not using the logo right now. And it just marks a little change for GitHub's sake and says, hey, there was a change there you made, and we can review that, revert the change if we want to. So anyway, lots of things we can do there. Well, let's actually do something with this little app component that we've created. So it's a function, and this function, again, in the end, is going to become a tag that we can type later on to use. So app. We can use that, drop that into the program, and it'll go drop whatever we're doing in this app tag in our React program. If we called it blah, guess what? Then we would return an app called blah, and when we, on this side, on the index.tsx side, we'd be looking for a component called blah. Now, as it just so happens, there it is, as it just so happens, we don't want to do that because app is the default main method, so to speak. It's used, that's kind of the last thing that is rendered is the app. And so this setup, we would want to leave as app, and we'll create other components here shortly. So let's go in and actually do something with this file, though, and start messing around with React a little bit. So I'm going to harken back to when we did the Bootstrap grid to these 3-person bands. So I'm going to create a const called band names, and I'm going to drop 3 bands into here. So we've got the Beastie Boys, Wolf Mother, and Cream are just 3 of my top 3-person bands, right? Semicolon at the end there. I don't know what it's trying to do here. Let's just see. It didn't like that I put a space in. See, it enforces these rules to try and help you to write good code. Sometimes bad, sometimes good. Okay, so I've got these band names in. I'll make it happy. And then if I want to refer to one of those band names, then here, instead of saying hello world, I can drop in the array band names and element 0. So I want to print out the first element there, the Beastie Boys, one of my all-time favorites. So let's save, and notice that it prints out the actual word band name 0. And that's because we're inside a h1 tag. This is HTML, and so it's just going to print whatever's in there. If I want it to be taken as code, then I need to just do this, our string interpolation, and drop these braces in to say, no, I actually want what's in there. So I save that, and then it's going to print out the Beastie Boys. All right. So we've kind of proved that little point there that we can print stuff out from the array. How about if instead I take this statement and I'm going to move it out of the app function and just up to the top of this level here. And then I guess first let's make sure that that will still work. So control save, and it still prints out. We're still good there, and I can prove that it's working by putting a 1 in there instead, save, and it'll print out Wolfmother instead. Okay, so I've now, as part of this TSX file, this class, so to speak, this component that we're building here that's going to be used in the React app, I can declare information here at the top of this, and then I can add additional functions. So I could create something like a function called band list, and then this function is going to return, so it's always with this return statement in a function, it's going to return some information. And what if I wanted to just put in here a few different band names? So what if I wanted to put in an h1 tag that has and says number 1, and then go into my band names array, grab element 0, okay, and then I'll put in a second one. This is number 2, and Wolfmother, whoops, not directly though, band names. Wolfmother's great, by the way. The first time I ever saw him was on a Late Night with David Letterman, or Late Show with David Letterman show, and I was just watching, and they came on, and they were like, you need to go look at the performance. They performed a song called Woman, and it was like the most rocking performance I'd ever seen on the show. It was awesome. All right, so I've got in 3 different, finished there, 3 different entries here for band names. Now, when I try and save this one, it's going to actually break. And this is an important thing to know, and if I hover over it, I can see the error. The JSX expressions must have at least one parent element. And so I can go view the problem, and it's saying you can't, they've got to have a parent element. If I hover over this again and say fix the problem, quick fix, wrap in a JSX fragment, and I don't even know what that's going to do. Not what I wanted it to do. Well, we'll talk about JSX fragments later on. But what we want, they need to be contained in something. They need to be inside something. And so it can be really simple. We have in the world of HTML our containers, which are div tags, just to say this is part of the same thing. So a div is just a container. I can take these h1 tags and drag them up inside this container, and then it'll be happy. It'll say, okay, yeah, they're contained in something, and that helps us too, because then we can apply classes to it and whatnot. But they have to be, these components that are being returned can't just be individual elements being returned. They need to be one thing being returned, and that's part of this div that's in there. All right, well, it's still only printing out Wolfmother, and so what can we do to get it to print out everything? Well, currently it's only printing out, we still have in here the app, it's only printing out this h1 tag. And so if I change this, I now have a new function called band list. And so if I trade this out and say, well, what I want to actually print out is the band list element, the tag, then if I save this, now it'll go print out each of those elements. So I'm building little components and then dropping those components into or functions. We're going to find out that functions and components are both used in React, and we kind of use them interchangeably. But let's say it right. So I've built a function here that's going to return this list of bands, and then I'm dropping that function here into my app function. And the app function is the thing that's being called here, that's printing it out in our index.html page to this div called root. And so the page stays intact, but the information that's inside this div can rotate and change as this page stays intact. All right, so we built a little function. We call that function here in the band list, and then that's being rendered over in the index TSX file, which is part of that index HTML file. Clear as mud? All right, we'll keep learning more in the next video. Spencer out.